welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Jason Harriet. Harriet? Jason Harriet.
He's busy taking a selfie of himself.
I was going to put it on social for us to be like, hey, recording new episodes.
That's good, but also get your name right.
Jackson Harris? No, that's not it. I'm Jason Harris, comedian, filmmaker, just a kid from Jersey trying to make it.
Yeah, Jersey.
Yeah,
I feel like I don't have anything else to say about Jersey. Ever.
You know how you make it is getting your name right. So,
so you're failing, is what you're saying.
I think we've known that for a long time.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we've been talking about the films of 1989, and in this episode, we've got the pick from our excellent producer David Rosen. What did you pick for us to talk about, Dave?
I picked UHF.
And I'm very glad that you did, because I too love UHF, and I would have maybe had it as my pick, but I was able to pick Heather's, which I also love even more, and yet we can talk about so many of my favorite movies this season.
It's really the banner year for you. You've got 3 of your favorite movies in this.
Yeah,
season.
We talked about Batman earlier, and then Heather's, and now this. So I'm excited, and I'm not sure. Jason, had you ever seen this movie before?
I had as a kid. In the glory days of video stores, you know, and that's one of the fun research points on this, is that how difficult it was to see this movie, because they didn't really give it a proper home video release till 2002.
Right.
So it kind of got this cult following and traded and, talked about. And I love stories like that,
Yeah. So you had seen this though as a kid?
I did see this.
Yeah.
Kid,
Okay. I wasn't sure, because Dave, obviously having picked this, is a huge Weird Al Yankovic fan. This is Weird Al's.
You guys went to a Weird Al concert together.
We've gone to a couple Weird Al concerts
or 3,
together.
I think. Did we?
I think
different states.
2. Yeah.
Two.
We drove to Utah one time, and then we went to one here at the Smith Center.
Meanwhile, I can't get this guy to go to LA to see like New Order and the Pet Shop Boys over here.
Well, I mean, if they got Weird Al on the bill too, then maybe he would go.
That would be a nice lineup.
Yeah.
That would be a weird juxtaposition.
That would be. But so I'm also a big Weird Al fan, and so I'd seen this movie many times. I don't specifically remember the first time, but I doubt I saw it in the theater, because, as you said, it was not really that widely released, both in the theater and on home video. But I'm sure I watched it on VHS or something, because I was a fan of Weird Al since I was like 8 years old. That was one of the first cassettes I ever got. When I got a cassette Walkman when I was like 8, was a Weird Al tape.
Yeah. It's one of these movies where like, it was Orion who released it, right? And they're like, this is going to save the studio. And it's like, man, if you have to pin all your hopes on one movie for that, like, that one is unfair to any movie.
Yeah.
And 2, if you're putting it on UHF, a Weird Al satire, you could just file for bankruptcy right now.
And they did. Yeah. So Dave, did you see this as a kid too?
Oh yeah, and that's interesting that it didn't get a proper release, like you said, until much later, because I remember having the tape and watching it all the time. I wonder where I got it.
Yeah, I may still have at home my VHS tape where I recorded it off of like HBO or Showtime. And that was what I had. I didn't have a tape that I bought. I had like a recording that I made.
And that's what, did you have that?
I don't remember, because I watched it constantly growing up, all the way through until I got whatever that first version that was fully released was. But
yeah. I watched it over and over too. And I don't remember like being aware of it being unavailable. I mean, I think all I knew was that it was on TV and I loved Weird Al. And so I taped it and then I watched it over and over again. So I'd seen it many times. But as we're mentioning, it was not a successful movie when it first came out. It was a box office failure, grossed $6.1 million on its budget of $5 million, which certainly they spend more than that on marketing and prints and whatnot. So it definitely did not make the money that it was hoped to make. As Jason was just saying, the studio, Orion, was in trouble already and was hoping for this to be a big hit. It got great test screenings and then it just totally bombed. And critics hated it. They really did. I was looking, there were some really harsh reviews. Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs down. And I watching their little segment, it was kind of funny how just like contemptuous they were of this movie and of Weird Al in general. Both of them claimed that they did not laugh once during this film, and Siskel even said, "I was flabbergasted at how little humor there was in this movie."
He also said in his review, never has a comedy tried so hard and failed so often to be funny. Which if I was the UHF like marketing team, I would have put that on the poster.
Yeah,
right?
they could have done something because it was real harsh.
Yeah.
So Ebert, Siskel, I think, had given it 0 stars in his review.
Right. And Ebert maybe 1.
Ebert gave it 1 star. And he said, somewhere there is an audience for UHF, I have no doubt. And somewhere this weekend, someone may laugh at some of its attempts at humor. Weird Al Yankovic has had a lot of success with his parodies, songs and music videos spinning off of Michael Jackson and other easy targets. But this is the dreariest comedy in many a month, a depressing slog through recycled formulas. Those who laugh at UHF should inspire our admiration. In these dreary times, we must treasure the easily amused. So,
yeah, you stupid idiots. Look at you. Ignorance is bliss. Enjoy a movie. So.
Yeah, he just had so much contempt.
He also said of Weird Al's performance that it was a dispirited vacuum at the center of many scenes.
Yes, he did.
He did not appreciate his acting.
He really hated it. And so, okay, I found a couple of slightly less harsh reviews. Des Thompson in the Washington Post said, UHF is not a uniformly funny experience unless you have to wear a bib and tend to laugh at anything, such as sudden gusts of wind. Yankovic, co-writing with manager Jay Levey, who also directed, goes for gag after gag. Some hit, some miss. You laugh, you cry. But the funniest thing in the movie, most will agree, is performer Michael Richards, who you may remember was the funniest thing on the ill-fated comedy TV series Fridays. Nuttier and more innocently endearing than Pee Wee Herman, he's an out-there janitor naif called Stanley Spadowski, who takes over a kiddie show and becomes big money with goofy, spasmodic charm. As momentarily amusing as Weird Al's send-ups can be, Richard's
Jason Harriet.
shtick, yes, thank you, is lastingly funnier. UHF is more likely to be remembered as his debut. So there's some positive.
So he thinks that you have to be a bib-wearing dunce to watch it. But he did like Michael Richards, who I was pretty mesmerized by watching this again.
I think Michael Richards is great in this movie, and I can definitely see that if he wasn't that well known, other than having been on Fridays, which is known mainly for being a failure, that this would make a big splash for him.
And this is what I liked about Michael Richards. In the first few scenes, you're like, this is a weird movie, obviously. And then Michael Richards is even much weirder than that. You're like, he might be just doing his own movie without realizing he's in someone else's movie right now. But it just works, like, because he's pretty captivating with his physicality.
He is, and I think he's very aware. I mean, this was written with him in mind,
right.
And he really got into it. I think he knows exactly what they wanted out of him, and he's delivering it very well. So finally, Michael Wilmington in the LA Times said, in UHF, writer-star Weird Al Yankovic tries to jam dozens of movie and TV parodies into the kind of dopes-on-the-job plot that was already a self-parody in the days of the first Police Academy. The parodies are sometimes amusing in a talk back to the TV screen sort of way, but the movie they're stuck in is beyond send-ups. The problem with UHF is that everything in it is a parody. The only logic for anything that happens is that there's some new thing to make fun of, mostly inanely. It's not much of a movie. But hey, give these daffy, goofy guys a break. Where would the film industry be without them? So he's basically saying that this is just like every other dumb Hollywood movie, which I don't think that's true.
Really? I think he's just giving a little more credence to like, hey, stoners, here's something new for you.
I guess, but I mean, and elsewhere in that review, he goes into the idea that this is, something that Hollywood does over and over with the dumb guys, flail through life or whatever.
Well, I mean, no, yeah, they do. That is definitely, and in this one, it was, we got to save the station, right? And all the rest is, we got to save the rec center,
right?
We got to save grandma's house, like this is classic 101 high concept comedy right there. So
Yeah, the plot is not super original, and I don't think anyone involved in the movie would claim that it is.
And it doesn't need to be, because
No.
like it's about the shows and the parodies that they do put on. So if you don't like those, you're not gonna like the movie at all. So.
Yes, and that was the case for everyone.
Every critic.
Every critic. Yeah, I was trying to find Mick LaSalle in the San Francisco Chronicle. I couldn't find the whole review, so I didn't use it, but on Metacritic, they had the little snippet, and he said something like, this movie is 90 minutes of Weird Al, which is 85 minutes too many.
It's funny because like it's not like I was writing down, and we'll probably talk more about it in the legacy sections, like these one-off weird character comedian movies, right? Like Chairman of the Board, Carrot Top.
Oh man.
Right? Which would be Dave's pick for 98 if we ever do it. But but it's not, but like Weird Al was like universally like accepted as like a cool like avant, like
I think at
act.
this time he was successful, but he didn't have the sort of beloved nature that he has now.
Really?
I think so.
I feel like we saw him all over MTV, and like
yeah,
he was like an accepted part of the pop culture, unlike Carrot Top, who has always been a punchline.
Yeah,
even though he's crushing the game out here.
He is literally crushing things with his large muscles a lot of the time.
Yeah, not with his watermelon sledge-o-matic. That's Gallagher.
Gallagher, right? Did Gallagher ever have a movie?
No, but he should. But
he should now. Now is the time for the Gallagher movie.
One year, this has nothing to do with UHF, but one year for Halloween, I went as Gallagher, and then I met Gallagher months after, and I showed him a picture of me as Gallagher, and all he did was show me all the things I did wrong, which, if you know Gallagher's reputation, is what he does to like every comedian and all his opening acts. And I was like, this is a perfect interaction with Gallagher.
Yeah. That's funny because he's known for being like mean and bitter. And Weird Al is known generally, whether you like his music or not, like for being such a nice, friendly guy. Yeah.
Gallagher wasn't mean. He was just like, well, here's what you did wrong here, and here's what you know. And I was like, at least we're not on stage doing this right now,
That would have been even better. Would you not have loved to be on stage with Gallagher as he criticized your Gallagher costume?
Or my act, like which he does, which is what he used to do. He would walk on stage while his opening acts were on and like critique their jokes as he was telling them. And I'd be like, what a horrible situation. Yes, I would love that.
Yeah. Well, Gallagher seems like a terrible guy, but Weird Al, nice guy. And
we'll be back next week.
Yeah. No.
Comedian review.
Yes. So do you have any other statistical things you want to mention?
No, I
here?
thought it was interesting that it took it took years for them to get this made, which was one thing. And then finally, Orion's like, if you can do it for less than 5 million, we'll do it for you. And then I thought one other fun thing was as the home video market was so huge then, the names in other countries, internationally it was released as the Vidiot from UHF, even though Weird Al just wanted it to be the Vidiot. And then the last thing was in Mexico it was released as Los Telelocos, the TV crazies.
That's a good one.
I like that. Yeah. Los Telelocos would be a good band name right now.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, because even the idea of UHF stations, I feel like by 1989, that was waning. I don't remember watching any UHF.
Cable was coming on.
Yeah, so it was already kind of a dated thing that people might not know what it means.
Teleloco.
All right. Well, we'll come back then in a moment and talk our general thoughts on Los Telelocos. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1989, we're talking about Weird Al Yankovic's UHF, the pick from our producer, David Rosen. And let's let Dave have the first crack at this. Why do you love UHF, Dave?
Well, I actually did rewatch it, in anticipation of this conversation. No! Yeah, I did. I watched this one.
I don't.
All right.
I started out, I was going to make notes of like some of my favorite moments. And within the first like 5 minutes, I had like 12 bullet points. And I was like, I can't take any more notes. I'm just going to watch this. It's just minute after minute, just nonstop ridiculous laughs,
It is. It's really funny. I mean, and I have seen it maybe not as many times as you have, but certainly many times. And stuff like that with a comedy, you figure after that many times, you're not going to laugh at it anymore.
Yeah.
But I still laughed at multiple things, I think, in this movie when I watched it again recently. So, yeah, it's funny to, I mean, and this is the thing about comedy being so subjective. And I've been, as a critic in screenings full of people in these comedies that I think are just incredibly idiotic. And I'm sitting there just like stone faced and everyone around me is laughing.
Mm.
So it's such a subjective thing, but it's, it was funny to watch that Siskel and Ebert segment where they're just in disbelief that anyone could ever laugh at this. And I laughed at a ton of it. And I'm sure as a kid, I laughed the whole time.
What were your 3 biggest laughs this time?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't write them down.
Well, off the top of your head.
Man, I do love the Twinkie Wiener sandwich. I think that's
I was gonna ask you if you've ever tried that, Josh.
No, I have not. Did you?
No, I don't think so.
He had to eat like 7 of them.
Yeah, there's a thing I think on Wikipedia or something that he had to eat, and then he became a vegetarian afterwards.
Yeah. See, like I thought, but like what? That's not laugh out loud. That's just like,
well, maybe not. That's just that's just a thing I like. I mean, it's more just like the silly lines that are just like random thing. I think Raoul's Wild Kingdom teaching poodles how to fly. That always makes me laugh. And especially when he's like, sometimes it takes them a little while to warm up.
And that to me that took me out of the movie, that whole segment, because like, and it's a sad story because there was more to that character.
Right. Were you thinking about the fact that actor died in a car accident while you were watching the movie?
No, I wasn't. I was just like, this really has nothing to do with anything. Although you
could say that about anything.
Yeah,
in the movie.
But it just comes out of nowhere too, So
yeah,
I don't know. I didn't love it. I was like, what? This is a bit that just kind of doesn't, like, if you lost all of that, it wouldn't change the movie at all.
Well, I think that's true of almost anything in the movie, that if you cut out all of those bits, you could still tell the whole story, but the story is not that interesting. As we were just saying, it's a basic Hollywood formula that just kind of exists to get to the crazy comedy bits.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't cut out Stanley Spadowski's,
you
taking over the TV show.
Right. No, you couldn't cut that out. But all of the little parodies, things like Raoul's Wild Kingdom and the little movie trailers.
Gandhi
and the fantasy,
2.
Right. The fantasy sequences and all of that stuff you could cut out. But that's what makes the movie funny.
No, that one just didn't work for me.
Yeah. That's fair.
And maybe it would have as a kid, but again, it like, because what did he do before the poodle? Like there was another.
Oh, the turtle is nature's suction cup, and he licks it and throws it on the ceiling.
That.
Yeah. Because it's absurd, and Weird Al has such. I mean, that's the sense of humor. Is just this absurdity, and it doesn't really make sense. And in some cases, it's like, well, what even is the punchline? But it's just like the punchline is the ridiculousness of it.
No, and I'm cool with that. Obviously, I chose Cabin Boy in season 1. Right?
That's true. Yeah, Cabin Boy does have. I feel like has some stuff in common with this. Right. So did Jason? Do you like this movie?
I did like it. Yeah, it's super fun and easy to watch. And I wonder if people who never saw Half Baked or something when that came out, if they watched it having no reference point, what they would think of it, what they would think of it today. And I think that's what people would probably feel like with UHF, right? Although weed is still more prevalent than UHF stations.
Right. I mean, and I think even though UHF stations don't exist anymore, you can understand the concept of it pretty easily.
Well, the other thing, Josh, as you know, this past fall, I produced the fantasy football TV show, but every week I would do 2 comedy sketches, and a lot of them were either movie parodies or like crappy lawyer commercials. So like, I have a very warm place in the cockles of my soul for stuff like this. So,
right.
And it just looked like they were having a lot of fun, and that, and you're like, it's 1989. It's the height of the home video boom. And this is, they're having a good time, man. So I liked it.
Yeah.
Well, what would be do you have a favorite segment of like just the random, parody segments?
Yeah. So first of all, like I said, Michael Richards is
he's great.
Just watching him, the way he does things physically is like, this guy could have been Chaplin, like he is incredible. I liked the Beverly Hillbillies shot for shot remake of Money for Nothing, which Mark Knopfler insisted on playing guitar on, which I thought was cool, And I also like the fashion. I noticed I would be like, "Ooh, I'd wear that shirt."
Yeah, you do have a similar fashion sense to
To
Weird Al.
all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, like Conan the Librarian's funny, but those are like one joke quick hits, right? So
Right, but that's okay.
right.
Like, I feel like the joke is funny, and I mean, part of why it's funny is because it's so obvious and dumb, and yet they just commit to it.
Yeah, and Josh, I think, you know, we've mentioned in this on the show in the past how we tried to write Miracle Beach 2, The Lucky Wish, our
Yes.
like first attempt at a script. And we had a TV talk show in there, the Gary Coleman show. Do you
Oh,
remember that?
yeah.
Yeah. So we had a talk show with Gary Coleman that was very Jerry Springer-esque. So I like Town Talk in this, where, you know, they're just throwing chairs at each other for no reason.
Right, right. I mean, at that time, that was all Geraldo Rivera that they're making fun of, and he actually did, I think, get his nose broken by some
In a fight.
unruly
Yeah.
guest, and he unlocked Al Capone's vault like they unlock Al Capone's glove compartment in this movie. And
I do like some of the random stuff, like at the beginning, you're like, when they're like, the aunt is telling the uncle, like, I know who could run your station. And then they just cut to a shot of Weird Al with a dog and a punch bowl. Like,
Right.
whoa. Like, that's the weird stuff I like. That goes like totally one step beyond for no reason of weirdness.
yes, yeah, all of that stuff. I feel like it's always just making weird jokes, and that they just then move on from. You know,
Can I tell you my favorite moment of
Yeah,
please.
something like that is when Fletcher says to the one guy, "And take that ridiculous thing off."
He
And
takes his
wearing,
mustache.
he's wearing that big hat. He-
That is one of the
So
funniest
good.
bits in the whole movie. Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff, like I could probably recite half this movie as I was
Yeah.
watching
Do it right now.
Yeah. So it's hard to tell in some ways. Like, is it just because I remember being so amused by this, or is it really well done? And I think it is. I mean, I can understand some of the criticisms, especially from a structure standpoint, that it is barely like there's very little story and it's really just a series of sketches. But as far as the humor goes, I still think it's all really funny.
I actually think the structure was fine. Like they put stuff in Act 1 that paid off in Act 3. Like is it Philo or Philo?
Oh, Philo, the
Philo.
crazy engineer at the station.
Right, where he's like testing the power of the tower on Weird Al that he uses to override the system in Act 3. And I mean, it's, hey, we got a station and now we have to make money with the station, which they do. And now we have to save the station because Uncle's a degenerate gambler. Like all of it structurally was okay, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it doesn't make sense, but it's just very rudimentary. And there's a lot more creativity in the comedy bits than there is in the story. But that isn't a problem. I mean, the arc of George Newman, Weird Al's character, getting dumped by his girlfriend and then she takes him back. I mean, that
There's
barely
no
exists.
arc. There's no
Yeah.
arc. He
Yeah.
just begs to have her back.
Right. And I mean, that whole thing feels like they thought, well, our main character has to have a love interest, so they threw that in, and there's not much going on with that character.
Yeah, you earlier you had mentioned, or you had asked if it took me out of the movie when we did Raoul's Wild Kingdom or whatever. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I knew the actor had died. No, but can you watch a Victoria Jackson performance who's perfectly adequate in
Yeah,
this
she's
film
fine in this movie.
and think like, wow, she's totally batshit insane now, right?
And she is totally insane now. But I mean, I feel like there's so many actors that have so many personal issues that if it's a good performance and it's a good movie, then that doesn't bother me.
You're saying Tom Sizemore should have played the girlfriend?
I mean, that would have been a choice. I would have been interested to see how that worked out.
The other two names, Jennifer Tilly, that seems like a natural fit, those two together.
Yeah.
And Ellen DeGeneres, who Weird Al said was their first choice, and he still doesn't know how she didn't end up with the part.
I mean, those would have been fine. Jennifer Tilly, I feel like, has more like wacky energy that she might have brought to it. Although in 1989, I don't know if she was doing that kind of thing. She does now.
I think she did, and it would have been fun to see her. I would have personally, if they had cast Jennifer Tilly, definitely written a scene for her to play off of Fran Drescher just for the voices alone.
Yeah.
Who's good in this movie, Fran Drescher?
Yeah, Fran Drescher is funny as Pamela Finkelstein, the receptionist / news anchor who just wants to get on the air with her little person cameraman.
Noodles
Macintosh or McIntyre.
good name.
Yes, at your service.
There's a lot of good names. This was one in the Siskel and Ebert review. One of the things Roger Ebert said is that any comedy that feels the need to give its characters wacky names has failed.
I like the names.
I like the names too. And then they go on to trash Weird Al's name, like his own actual name, Weird Al.
Right.
Yes.
Since I had brought it up, Christopher Lloyd was the other name they were thinking about for Stanley, but it had to be Michael Richards.
Yeah, he is really fantastic. And it reminds you, because other than Seinfeld, nothing that he's done really is well known. And he barely works anymore at all. So it really reminds you of that he could have been a really strong comedic actor in a lot of different things and just never was.
Right. He was Problem Child. Was he in Problem Child?
Was he? I don't know. Maybe.
And I loved Unstrung Heroes, which is a film from the 90s that I think Diane Keaton directed, and he's great in, which I would love to see. I haven't seen it since the 90s, but I agree with you. His talent is, you could say Seinfeld and Weird Al were the only two who kind of utilized his talents correctly.
Right. And speaking of Seinfeld, one of the alternate castings here, I did see that Weird Al wanted Jerry Seinfeld to play Bob, the sort of straight man friend of George Newman, and instead they got David Bowe.
Yeah,
who I don't know anything
they should
else
have got
about.
David Bowie.
That would have been David Bowie could have played Philo. That would have been an interesting.
Well, Philo, the two names were Joel Hodgson from
Mystery Science Theater,
and Crispin Glover. And Crispin Glover said the only role he would play is Crazy Ernie, which I love.
The car salesman who says, "I'll club this seal to make a deal." That's another really funny line that I think I had forgotten about. I
like Spatula City.
Spatula City is
Josh has a Spatula City T-shirt, which is awesome.
Yes, I forgot that I wore this on purpose, and then I forgot that I was wearing it.
I was gonna say, Josh, that you are a miserable, worthless hunk of slime, as Weird Al calls himself in the movie. But now that you have a Spatula City T-shirt on, there's no way I could say that. Although, do you know the story about the billboard of Spatula?
Oh, that they bought the billboard, and it was on a sort of little used back road, but they left it up because no one else wanted to buy it, and
people kept asking about Spatula.
There is Spatula City, because everyone wants to go to Spatula City. Yeah, those are really funny. And I mean, one thing I know is that there's a lot of these things are very specific parodies of things that at the time that I watched this movie when I was a kid, I didn't know what any of those things were. And I mean, I'm sure I knew Indiana Jones. It opens with this elaborate Raiders of the Lost Ark parody. And that I'm sure I was familiar with as a kid. But a lot of this other stuff, I didn't know, even like Rambo or like Gone with the Wind.
Close Encounters.
Yeah, Close Encounters, any of that stuff. And yet I still thought this stuff was so funny when I was a kid. And that's like listening to Weird Al songs. There are tons of Weird Al parodies that came out when I was a kid where I didn't know what the original was. And in some cases, I still may not know.
Yeah, me too.
And yet I still found those songs funny.
Well, the Raiders thing at the beginning, where the boulders rolling through different environments. We've all seen so many parodies of it. I'm wondering, was it already played out by the time this one came on? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, that certainly was like a really, really well-known. I mean, that movie was massively successful. And in '89, I mean, this came out opposite the third Indiana Jones movie.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why it failed.
They tried to use that sequence to help market it, to use some of that Indiana juice,
but it didn't work out.
And my thing with the Rambo sequence, which I thought was actually a good sequence, and actually Stallone had agreed to do it, which I think is funny.
Do a cameo as the guy selling the helicopter tickets.
Yeah, my thing with that is we're already in like the big chase in Act 3, and like again, that didn't help propel the movie to the next thing. It kind of took me out of like, okay, well, now we're actually in an important story point. Like, we should kind of be there. Right. As ridiculous as that sounds.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It does come very late in the movie. But I thought one thing I noticed this time that I was sort of impressed with is that you think of, or at least I think of, all these fantasy sequences, whatever, as not really being relevant to the story. But every time George sort of ends up daydreaming a movie parody, they do come back to it being relevant. At the beginning, he's thinking about being Indiana Jones, and he's And that leads to him getting fired from his burger job because he's not paying attention to what he's doing. He falls asleep and he has that Money for Nothing Beverly Hillbillies parody. And that leads to him missing dinner with the girlfriend and they break up. And even that Rambo sequence, while it is sort of like a distraction in some ways from the urgency of he's got to go rescue Stanley, at the same time, he imagines himself as Rambo, who's like completely invincible. And then you see him barge into where they've kidnapped Stanley and he thinks he's all invincible, but of course he's not. And they immediately grab him too. So it had a little bit of relevance.
You're playing with a very loose thread there, my friend.
I thought that considering that the general impression of this movie and even the impression that I had of the movie is that as funny as those parodies are, they're not really relevant to the story. I was like, okay, they at least put some effort in to tie them back together.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. And like I said, I thought structurally I was not banging my head against the wall. Like, what the hell is why did you guys do this? It was cool. It was fine. Yeah.
Yeah. It is cool and fine. And that Rambo parody, which is really a parody of the second Rambo movie, I watched that second Rambo movie for the first time like a few months ago before the most recent Rambo movie came out. And watching Rambo First Blood Part 2, it is astounding how little difference there is between that and the parody in UHF. Like you watch that bit in UHF and you think this is so over the top and crazy. And then you watch Rambo and you realize it is almost exactly the same.
You know what else is over the top and crazy, which I was amused by? It's an important line where RJ, right?
RJ Fletcher, the evil rival station owner.
Who's going to tear down the station because, as they ask, isn't it illegal to own 2 television stations in the same town?
Yeah, that it was at the time true, but of course it's very not true anymore.
Not true.
Yeah. So, I think we have to mention Kevin McCarthy as RJ Fletcher because he is fantastic. Like he really commits
He's a real
to this.
Asshole, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the great villains.
Yeah, and like he does the evil laugh like multiple times in this movie.
Yeah, they really went all out making him a bad guy here.
Right. And I think that's part of what's funny about the movie. He's not just like kind of a shady businessman. He is sadistically evil, like gratuitously evil to everyone around him, including his whiny son, who is another very funny character who's always saying, Dad.
Yeah, he definitely goes all in on that, which is funny when Noodles trips him at the end and he goes,
yes.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's very funny. And Kevin McCarthy, of course, like I always still remember him from the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That was probably, even though he worked constantly for like 60 years.
Yeah.
That's what people know him for. And very game for being ridiculous in this movie.
I also thought it was weird when they were putting up their fall schedule. As we know, Dave is always pitching us a show called Bestiality Today. And I was wondering, Dave, is this where you got it from?
Is that your new podcast that you're producing?
Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, there's a ton of little just random jokes in the names of the shows that they put up on the schedule. The Volcano Worshippers Hour, and
which he had a club in high school.
Yeah, Weird Al is something that he actually did, and a lot of little just background jokes and stuff like that in this movie, which I think are great.
It's fun. It's fun. Like it's the type of movie you would probably want to be a part of.
Yeah, like you said, it seems like they had a lot of fun making it. I'm sure they hoped it would be a big, huge success and launch Weird Al into a new phase of his career making movies, which
it did, as the center square on Hollywood Squares.
Yeah. I mean, eventually he did a lot of other TV work. At least he still has not made another movie.
Right. And he said this one, like, until the Nirvana video, came out, this like kind of like the reception kind of dulled his creativity.
Right. And his career too. Like you were saying, he was big on MTV at this time. He was definitely famous. And then I think he had a slight down period before coming back in the 90s and then just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But yeah, for me, at least in 1989, when I was 10, like Weird Al was the coolest thing around. Like definitely for 10-year-olds, Weird Al was it.
I thought he was all right.
I don't know how I got it. Maybe my friends were into him or whatever, but I was really like all in on Weird Al. And I remember getting that cassette And it wasn't even like whatever was popular at the time. It was Weird Al's first album from like 6 years earlier, because I was going to start at the beginning and really build up my Weird Al collection.
I want to say one other funny bit.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. Was a homeless man on the bench sitting next to the blind man doing a Rubik's Cube, who would just adjust the Rubik's Cube, hand it to the homeless man, go, "Is this it?" And he'd go, "Nope." And then he could hand it back, adjust it again. "Is this it?" "Nope." And it's a freaking Rubik's Cube. So that you could have come back to that like that was like maybe 10 minutes in the movie. You could have come back to that like at the end of the movie and still been doing it, and it would have been funny to me.
Yeah, there's so much of that. Just random weird stuff.
Right.
I love Getty, even though it's a problematic Getty Watanabe as Kuni, the karate instructor, who's a bit of a stereotype, but not in a mean-spirited way at all. And I still think it's funny, and I think you can still laugh at it. But when they jump out of the supply closet and yell "supplies,"
but that's more punny than I didn't think it was bad.
No, I don't think it's bad either, but I can see how people might look at that and cringe a little now. But it's just so, it's not mean-spirited, and there's nothing about this movie that's mean-spirited. And so I think you get the sense that it's loving, it's positive. And I mean, that was another one where they wrote the part for him, and he plays it wonderfully. He's very funny, and the whole Wheel of Fish sequence. "Are you ready, Weaver?" I love that he refers to that's the contestant, Phyllis Weaver. And I remember all these little bits in the box. I'm sure my friends and I, when I was this age, would definitely say things to each other like that. "Stupid! You're so stupid!"
Yeah, and to me, I still go to Michael Richards making a child drink from a fire hose, and his story of how he got a mop for his birthday at the age of 8. It was his prized possession.
It's kind of dark. Some of
that's
that
the
stuff.
It's funny.
Yes, it is funny, but yeah, you think about it, and it is. What kind of life did Stanley Spadowski have as an 8-year-old?
I mean, even as an adult, it didn't seem to matter. He probably. He's his own Walter Mitty, even though that's what George Newman, Alfred E. Newman.
We need a really dark Stanley Spadowski like origin story movie.
I could see like if they did like Stanley Spadowski American Psycho or something like that.
So get Michael Richards out of retirement to return as Stanley Spadowski 30 years later.
Dave, do you think Dave's hair is a little more Michael Richards or a little more Weird Al today?
Well, Dave, we always talk about Dave's hair. Like now, because it's shorter, it's not so much. But I remember when your hair was longer, when I would describe you to people, I would say, "Oh, the guy who looks like Weird Al." Like that was the way, that was my go-to. I feel like of all the things we've compared Dave to, he looks the most like Weird Al.
How would you describe me to people?
No comment.
Come on, man.
I don't know. He's bald and has a big beard.
Not right now. I'm saying back in the day, I would always say you look like the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Nobody remembers
Jack
who that is anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
Was that him? Who?
I don't think so.
Was it not Jack Noseworthy?
I don't know. I mean, I remember those commercials, but yeah.
Where was his movie?
Right.
He just had that MTV show.
Jack Noseworthy did. Yeah. Was he the guy in those commercials?
I feel like it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, people would compare me to Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, I think, which maybe not now because he's a little haggard looking and worn out.
Yeah. I used to get Seth Rogen when I had hair and not as fat as I am.
Yeah. So like when we were in high school?
Maybe, I don't know. I had an ex-girlfriend who said I was shaped like a silverback gorilla. I thought that was pretty funny. That's pretty good. So.
I, for the record, never described you in any of these ways, but Seth Rogen isn't okay. I feel like your brother looks more like Seth Rogen than you do.
He's too thin now.
Yeah, that's true. And you're too fat. You need to get a middle ground and
to Rogen it out.
Yes. Anyway, UHF.
Should we give it our what do you want to rate it on? Towers, satellite towers. They're not
flying poodles.
Flying poodles. No, I didn't like that.
You don't like the flying poodles? Okay,
yeah,
that's fine. It doesn't matter. Marbles in the oatmeal.
Sure, we can do that.
Sure. Okay. How many marbles in the oatmeal will you give this movie?
I'm gonna give it three
Okay.
marbles.
All right, that's not terrible. I give it a 4. I mean, it's like a 5 in my heart just because how much nostalgia I have for it, but I can see that it's not, it's not perfect, but it just makes me laugh and I always enjoy watching it. Dave, I assume you give this 18 out of 5.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, let's just go with that.
You're so lucky you found a woman who loves you.
Does Gina like this movie? Gina, Dave's fiance?
I don't know if she's ever seen it, to be
What?
honest.
You didn't make her watch this on your first date?
Gina! Gina, do you hear us? We're recording in Dave's.
She's upstairs right
I
now.
know, yes. Gina, let's have a guest appearance real fast.
Yeah.
Fantastic photographer, Gina Mazzoni. On her way down, did you see
This is
Did
terrible
you see
podcasting.
UHF, Gina? Why do you love him, Gina?
Let's not make her answer that.
She loves the 10.
Yeah.
A reference to season 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina.
Thanks, Gina. You can go back upstairs where you've been locked away for many a month.
Luckily, I have a microphone on the stairs, so we can capture all that
Let's
audio.
Let's definitely edit all of that.
Are you gonna yell at her when we leave? I told you not to come down. I'm doing business here.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Well,
come back with some legacy thoughts.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll be right back.
Warning, do not listen while hungry.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Barajas, host of All Rice, No Beans, a podcast all about restaurants and the people behind some of your favorite spots to eat, where we talk about how they started, all the ups and downs, and my favorite part, the food and drinks. Ooh, and let's not forget about the desserts. So subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, follow me on all social media because I have the pictures of all the food. And if you want to be on my podcast and you're a restaurant owner or in the business, email me at allricenobeanspodcast@gmail.com. And remember, you were warned. Don't listen while hungry.
Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1989, we've been talking about the pick from our producer, David Rosen, and we've been insulting him. It's Weird Al's UHF.
It is, and we all liked it
Yeah.
To varying degrees.
Varying degrees, yes. Yeah, I mean, I can understand, especially if you didn't grow up with it, that coming to it without that nostalgia feel, it's not as...
I'd love to show it to like a millennial who has no context of it.
Yeah.
I think it would go over really well, quite honestly, because of all this, the weird shit that's really popular now, the Adult Swim kind of stuff and all that.
Right. I mean, and
that fit right in.
That actually goes into part of the legacy, which is that Weird Al has been hugely influential on like a whole generation of comedy. And people who watched this movie probably on HBO or whatever as kids and then grew up to be people who make shows for Adult Swim or Comedy Bang Bang or whatever, they all loved Weird Al.
Yes, including Zach Wolk, who was a producer on Tim and Eric, who made the web series The Real UHF in the 90s with Dr. Demento, Neil Hamburger, and Count Smokula.
I don't know Count Smokula.
That's research, guys.
Good job.
That's research.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. And I think a large part of Weird Al's subsequent career, especially appearing on TV shows and doing animation voice work and all of this stuff that he's been able to do beyond his music, really comes out of all of these fans who saw him and heard him when they were kids.
Well, I was trying to make a list of like movies like this where it's like a novelty act who gets a movie, right? Like we mentioned Chairman of the Board. Also in 1998, Ringmaster, the Jerry Springer movie.
Oh man, these are terrible movies to compare it
to. This is what I figured Dave's picks are for these years. 2006.
Yeah, Dave, a huge Jerry Springer
Dave's
fan.
gonna pick Larry the Cable Guy, Health Inspector.
Oh my God.
Of course, 1989, Dave also could have picked No Holds Barred, the Hulk Hogan Tiny Lister classic.
Oh man.
And then in 1992, Double Trouble with those two giant twins.
Who?
Peter Paul and David Paul, the twins.
Oh man, I don't know that one. I was thinking of the Double something else, the one with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Double Jeopardy?
Double Impact? No, Double Jeopardy is an Ashley Judd movie.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pick any of those, but in 2001, I am going to pick Freddy Got Fingered.
There you go.
Oh yeah, that's a good. I was thinking more of like Wayne's World is a movie that I think owes a lot to UHF. It's also about it's about a cable access show. And it is, like you were saying, these kind of one-off. I mean, there were 2 Wayne's World movies, but they were definitely like goofy pop culture figures who got their own movie.
They were so much smarter, and I know you can love UHF all you want, but Wayne's World is a much smarter movie.
I feel like Wayne's World is a very similar movie, that there's a lot of random parody stuff in it that doesn't really have anything to do with the story. And it's kind of this rudimentary thing where they have to save. I mean, in that case, it's like they save themselves from selling out or whatever. I mean, I love Wayne's World, but I think I love Wayne's World for all the same reasons I love UHF.
What about right now, Impractical Jokers, the movie?
Oh man, they're the worst. But yes, that is a good comparison. I was also thinking of something like Be Kind, Rewind. That's about, it's, they're not pop culture characters outside of the movie, but it's very much about like these goofy guys who make their own cultural artifacts in order to save the business.
I don't know, man. I think that's a little, you're maybe overestimating the influence of this, because you can go back to like Kentucky Fried Movie and say that those kind of spoofs were being created then, or Airplane with the Zucker brothers, right?
Right. I mean, it's a continuum. I mean, those movies influenced this, but then this became like a huge part of that genre, and I guarantee you people who made those subsequent movies saw this and took something from it.
I thought the Adult Swim one was fair and accurate.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, Weird Al himself has been involved with a bunch of Adult Swim productions, from Tim and Eric to comedy. I think Comedy Bang Bang is an Adult Swim. That's like IFC. Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that for someone like Weird Al, who is mainly famous for parodies, that it makes sense for his movie to be filled with all these things, and that's part of the reason why it works so well, I think.
Yeah. I mean, especially at the time when he was still like somewhat early in his career and all people knew were the parodies. Like if he's going to make a movie, of course, people expect movie parodies in his movie, like they expect music parodies in his music.
Yeah, just like when we watch Chairman of the Board, we want to see wacky props and how they affect Carrot Top's acumen as a business leader. The chairman of the board.
Have you seen Chairman of the Board?
I have never seen it. So.
I never. The only thing I've seen is that famous Conan O'Brien interview. Have you seen this?
No.
It's with Norm Macdonald and Courtney Thorne-Smith, and Courtney Thorne-Smith is on to probably promote like Melrose Place or something.
Yes.
But she was the like romantic lead in Chairman of the Board.
Yes.
And she's done her interview, and then Norm Macdonald comes out for his interview, and she's sitting next to him, and he just spends the whole time shitting on Chairman of the Board to the point where I'm pretty sure she gets up and leaves.
It's hilarious. That was hilarious. Although you could say Dirty Work is a Norm classic, another one that fits in this kind of like
it really does,
offbeat character, simple story type.
Yeah, I again, Norm Macdonald seems like someone who I'm sure loves Weird Al.
You don't know that.
I don't know for sure, but I feel like
everyone does.
There's a lot of connection there. And Weird Al, of course, now, as I was saying before, is totally beloved. I mean, in a way that he was not in 1989. He's like a cultural institution.
Yeah, and you're wondering when he's going to end up on one of these cable shows as a wacky uncle or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's done stuff like that more in voice work. He's done a lot of animation where he's played ongoing characters. But I mean, I feel like Weird Al has been so successful that if he did something like that, it would be because it was like
a cool project.
Right. Exactly. Like he doesn't need work at this point. He's made his money. He's done very well for himself.
Okay, we get it. You love Weird Al.
I mean, I do love Weird Al, but I think I'm not alone. Maybe in 1989, it was a much smaller community of people who loved Weird Al, but now it's everywhere.
Dave, who's better, Weird Al or New Order?
Weird Al by a huge margin. Sorry.
This conversation is not even legitimate anymore. Wow. Let's move on, Josh, to social media. Or what are we doing? Well,
do we have any other things to talk about with the legacy? I mean, other than Weird Al, I mean, there's also, we talked a bit about Michael Richards and his career and how he never, he went on to Seinfeld was after this, but, and that was obviously huge for him, but he never became this star on his own that this movie indicates that probably he could have been with a wider variety of roles. So, and this was Fran Drescher. One of her earliest roles as well was before The Nanny and before she was known for her particular Fran Drescher persona. So I feel like it shows they had a good eye for talent for people who would go on to bigger things.
For sure.
I thought Fran Drescher very sexy in this movie.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Pamela Finkelstein. sex symbol potentially.
Just saying, like,
yeah. I mean, and they play that up, whereas Victoria Jackson, not only is she a completely boring character, but she just like looks boring in this movie. Like, I mean, maybe Weird Al was not comfortable with being a romantic leading man. You notice they never even kiss until that bit, the Gone with the Wind parody at the end, where you don't even really see them kiss.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was comfortable with anything like that, but yeah, she's just very dowdy in this movie. And we mentioned her legacy of being a completely insane person.
And that's where we should end it, Josh.
I've got two quick little legacy things to throw in there.
And that's where we will not end it, Josh.
There you go. We got a little longer. No, but first of all, first time I ever hung out with Josh Bell outside of just a random movie screening here and there was at your house for your birthday to watch UHF.
Oh, that's true.
This has nothing to do with the legacy of the film.
That is
The
legacy.
legacy of the film is my birthday party.
That's right.
Which
That's
Jason
legacy.
was possibly also at.
I was, but not for that.
Not for UHF.
It was
Okay.
just, oh yeah, you weren't there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, it does. If it doesn't involve Jason directly, then he doesn't want to talk.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
I mean, I'm waiting for your legacy.
All right.
Oh,
What's your
and
other point, Dave?
The other point is me, Jewish Dave, and my comedy rap
There you
career,
go.
which is incredibly influenced by everything on screen in
That's
UHF.
a fair legacy point.
Yes.
Not you went to Josh's birthday party. So.
Well, this show wouldn't, we wouldn't all. be
Right. That's
friends,
true. Awesome movie year might not exist
Yeah,
if Dave and I
so-
hadn't hung out.
That's right.
And some people might think that's for the better.
Yeah, but those people aren't in this room.
But keep listening to us every
Yeah. Keep listening
Is
now.
Jewish Dave ever coming back?
No, absolutely not. But it's out there. You could search for it, and it's terrible.
Will
and,
there ever be
you
like
know.
a reunion show?
There was at Polygrind a few years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know. We might do a little something here and there at some point, but it's incredibly offensive, and I don't know if now is the time to bring it back. So
That's fair. All right, Jason, you want this episode to end, so let's end it.
I think we've said everything that we can
All right,
pretty much
all
say
right.
on it.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. What's our social media?
I'm Jason Harris Comedy at Facebook and Instagram, Jay Harris Comedy on Twitter. And we are Awesome Movie Year, Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. Also, my website, goforjason.com, under construction.
Still under construction. It's like a road in Las Vegas. I am at joshbellhateseverything.com, which is not under construction because it's looked the same since 2004. You can also find me at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And listen to David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
you can find Piecing It Together wherever you listen to this podcast, and also on social media at Piecing Pod.
What do we have for our next episode, Jason?
It is, well, it's the category of cult classic, which this could have fit into as well.
Absolutely.
But we are choosing another cult classic from 1989, the aptly titled Gleaming the Cube.
What does Gleaming the Cube mean?
We
Tune in.
still might not know.
I was going to try and pretend like we did and say, tune in next time to find out.
Because we know.
Yes. And thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.